Hi everyone, this is a continuation video of my previous videos, the two videos that I made where I address the problems in certain systemic problems in the healthcare systems of the world, which can lead to patient getting wrongful access, misguided access to healthcare, or partial healthcare remedies than the actual remedy that they need because of many systemic problems present in the system in which they are getting the healthcare access, like which could be a systemic problem of a particular organization. Sometimes it's a systemic problem with an entire set of professions upgrading that needs to happen but hasn't happened in that profession. And majorly in the first two videos I addressed the issue related to antisocial personalities and criminal minded people, because they are also a major chunk of the systemic problem that is existing on earth currently that needs to be addressed. And if we don't address the problems related to such personality types, we are going to continue having a worser world than what we had previously, because the basic paradigm of living, which is a principle of living that has existed from time immemorial, it is a basic necessity of a good living that, if forgotten by humanity, is the thing that leads to destruction of humanity or mass extinction also of species, when an entire species or an entire group of people are doing things that are misaligned with the basic principles of living. So in the basic principles of living, if you look at it, even boil it down to the microscopic level of what our body is made of, our body is made of different cells, right? And I'm not going at the DNA level. I can go there with the DNA level explanation as well, but that might become a little bit too complicated for those who don't even understand the basic cellular functionality of our body. So at the cellular level, we have cells which speak with each other, that are bound to each other to make our basic body's building block and functions, right? So, and at the cellular level, two elements I will introduce here. First is, just look at our skin. Our skin is made of multiple thousands of cells that are joined together with each other. If I take a little bit of a cheek swab from the skins of my cheek and you to put it under the microscope, which a pathologist or a student of pharmacy has studied in their degree programs. So when we do a microscopic histopathological analysis of our skin cells, we will see that if I'm taking a cheek swab scrap, obviously scraping of the skin is happening, so the cells are going to be all dispersed in the medium, and it is not going to be sometimes, rarely, you might find 2-3 cells of your cheek swab sticking together with each other, right? So, but while I'm scraping out a sample to take a sample to look at it, sometimes in our pharmacognosy courses in India, pharmacognosy is a field where you do microscopic analysis. You can do microscopic analysis of even plant extracts or animals. So if I take a fennel seed and cross section it and look under the microscope, again, if I have thinly sliced that cross section of a fennel seed, I can see the basic building blocks of how a fennel seed is structured and how the cells of that constitute a fennel seed are sticking together to each other. So under these microscopic analysis of a cell, we know that all our cells are joined together with each other. So if my skin cells are healthy, what should ideally be be the look of the skin cell when I'm looking under the microscope? For a healthy skin cell, ideally each cell of my skin is joined with other cells of the skin around it. So there will be at least 8-10 cells surrounding one single central cell, right? And those 8-10 cells that are surrounding one single central cell, or whatever number, there could be 4-5 cells, I don't know the general number that each cell is attached to, but there will be a certain number of cells that are attached to each other. And these number of cells that are attached to each other is essentially like how a human exists on earth as well. As a human, every human actually, or any plant or animal or creature of the universe, that is a living creature, they have also this basic principle that in order to survive and have good quality life, you have to be connected to some basic few good connections in your life. Because the cell, that is, let's say I'm examining a cell here, the cell which is present in this dot point here is surrounded by, let's say, 5-6 cells around it. Those 5-6 cells are again surrounded by 5-6 cells around it, and like that this whole area gets expanded and forms this whole area of my face, right? Slowly the binding of each cell with each other causes the whole structure of my body to form, and eventually causes this whole body to have this particular cellular skin structure, right? So at that time, if my body is healthy, for my body to be healthy, for my skin to have healthy functionality, is it just that each cell has to be attached to another cell? That is not really just the only function of the cell, right? The cell has particular functions. Cell has functions of expelling via sweat some toxins out the body. Cell has also function actually to help us breathe easily, because this is a problem I understood when I got some skin related problems going on with my health in recent years. And I understood that if I don't have good clean skin health at those time points, I was having some breathing distress, because the cells exchanging of nutrients like function, what is studied in a plant cell much more deeply, and in an animal's body this functionality is not being studied so deeply, but it is also a factor that enables us to stay healthy. If I don't have good skin health, I am more likely to not have good health in my body. So and skin is actually our largest organ of the body, so skin has to have a normal functional capacity to do its normal functions. And many cells of our body are not simply just attached to each other, they are also supposed to exchange nutrients with each other, exchange water, the fluid exchange has to happen between cells, oxygen exchange has to happen between cells, as well as nutrient exchange has to happen. These are the basic minimum thing that has to happen. So while these things are happening within the cells, that is needed for a cell to have a basic functional thing going on with it, for it to be healthy, the opposite of it will mean what? It will be an unhealthy cell. So the moment there's some chemical out there in the environment where I'm living, that there's some air pollution going on, and there is you have heard of the concept of acid rain. So there's, like, say, acid in our environment because of some factory around this area. I don't know that acid is there in the environment, but my skin will know it first, even before I detect as consciously as a human being that there might be acid in the environment. How? If some acidic particles now fall on my skin, what will it do? Acid has its particular purpose of breaking down certain things. It will cause burning of sensation in the skin. So this acidic response, acid-led response, causes what? Breakdown of my skin cells wherever the acid fell. And while I have because I've been a pharmacy student, we have done many chemistry experiments. So I know as a pharmacy student, and while doing chemistry experiments, when we were in a hurry or we were not paying attention, we have also, some students like me have also experienced skin burn as a result of some acid or alkali falling on our skin while doing the experiments. So I understand the burning sensation that happens when acid falls on you is a very different kind of a burning sensation that happens not just when acid falls on you, but it's a different burning sensation that happens to someone who's having some disorder related to their skin when they are walking down the streets and high sunlight is there in the area that they live. At that time, the burning sensation you will feel on your skin when radiation related to sun's activity is high. And it is also a very different kind of burning that will happen to your skin when you are, let's say, cooking food. And while cooking food also, there are 2-3 different kinds of burn you can get when cooking food. Or while experimenting in a lab where burner is used, again, you can burn your hands while doing any activity with fire. So at those time points when you're using fire to cook something, fire to do some chemical experiments, at those time points, if your hands get burned, if your skin gets burned, that is again a different type of burning sensation that will emerge. And these distinction between these three burning sensations at the experiential level, the person who knows it at the experiential level, does that person know more about how different each of these burning sensations are? Or will the person who has just theoretically studied that chemical burn stings like this, the fire burns causes these cellular differences in a thing, one who has never experienced the difference between these different kinds of burns cannot at a visible level, when doing microscopic analysis or when looking at the skin structure of a person with a burn, may or may not be able to discern it. They will only be able to discern it if they have really studied the burn characteristics of a person at a deeper and more meaningful level. But if they have not studied it theoretically only at a deeper and more meaningful level, if a patient appears now and that person is now a doctor, dermatologist, or a general physician, or an internal medicine physician, and I go to the doctor and I tell the doctor, and I have visible symptoms of something, some burn like symptom that has happened on my skin. Now, when the doctor is not well versed, what will happen? It happened to me. And that's why I'll tell you what will happen. When I went to the doctor said, you have allergy going on. And I didn't have allergy going on at that moment of time. Not the kind of allergy that he was diagnosing. And later on, months later, I got allergy related symptoms and which was also not actually allergy, but it was showing up as a symptom of allergic response. I might talk about it a little later in this video. But when I did go to a doctor, actually speaking, I knew that I had experienced a chemical burn. Because being a chemistry student, I know how a chemical burn feels like. I didn't remember a difference between what is the difference between an acidic burn or an alkaline burn. So I don't know whether it was an acidic burn or an alkaline burn, but it was a sharp chemical burn that only a chemical toxin with either high acidity or high alkalinity will provide to you when you touch a thing like that. And at that time, I was going through someone deliberately trying to poison me experience. So, and who had access to my homes? The people who had likely access to my homes were my family with whom I lived and who have had access to my keys to make duplicate keys, or who have entered my home when I didn't used to live in India to use the keys they had access to enter that home. I had given some temporary access to a neighbor. I had also maids who were coming in my home to do active, and I had a rotating set of maids who had to come and work there because they were quitting for some personal family reasons and other reasons. So because of whatever thing was going on with the maids, they kept quitting. So at the time point when I experienced the burn, by then there were at least 5 to 10 people who had access to the key or access to my home. And when a maid is working in your home, are you always, if you're not a suspicious person, if you're not a paranoid person, which I was not and I am not like that, so I never used to monitor maids in my home. If the maid is chatting with me, sometimes I would chat with the maids. But some days while the maid is doing some cleaning activity somewhere and I'm busy cooking for myself or doing something else that I was deeming at that point is something I need to do. If I was busy with some other activity, I'm not monitoring my maid 24/7. I do not have a camera in my home to monitor a maid. There are many months and days when I didn't live in my home and I was going outside my home for travel purposes with my cousins or travel purposes with friends. So there were all these opportunities, people with access to the key of my home, people who are criminally minded could have come to my home to do something in my home. And now, not being a paranoid person, I never suspected until an actual harmful incident happened to me that this can happen to someone. Likewise, when I mentioned all the covert abuse, manipulative abuse, criminally minded thing that can go behind someone's back, unless you are actually not a criminally inclined person, or you do not have this twisted mentality about taking advantage of others, or have some antisocial personality like disorder qualities in you, at those time points you will not even imagine that these kind of things can happen with you, right? And that is the reason why I'm making this video. 90% of us, 50%, at least minimum 50% of us have never experienced actually antisocial personality behavioral patterns of anyone else in our life. At least 50% of the society is like that. So they don't know how bad it is when someone really highly sociopathic, psychopathic, high IQ holding person wanting to win at any cost type of a personality, or people who just simply are against the grain of basic foundational principle of life, because this cell structures being joined together to each other is a basic foundation of life that humans also like that have to be. Basically, in order to have some meaningful life, they have to have some people connected to them to bring some meaning to their life. Then not only do those people have to be connected to them to bring meaning, those people who are connected to the central cell, if this is the central cell and around it there are 5 cells, all the 5-6 cells that are now joined, interconnected to each other, for that central one person, that central main cell, let's say that is cell 1, and cell 1 is connected to cell 1 to 5 around it, or cell 2 to 5 around it. So these cell 2 to 5 that are connected to cell 1, they all have to have not only a compacting connection with each other, like well knit connection with each other, along with the strength of the connection with each other, they also have to have exchange of information in the right way. And for a cell, the exchange of information that is happening, if that cell, now skin has also some particular function, like let's say when acid falls, at burning sensations, sensory responses, this pattern of distinction between what sensation I am feeling, that sensation itself is being transmitted by the nervous system of the body. So this cell is not only connected with just the cells of the skin, but that central cell is also connected to the central nervous system cells. So the cell that is connected now also to the central nervous system cells, it is transmitting information to the central nervous system, and then the central nervous system's pathway is then transmitting the information to the brain, which is where my brain is now distinguishing between the fact of what kind of injury happened to my skin, or what kind of sensation is my skin feeling. So if I was walking down the street and rain starts to fall, but it's not like heavy rain is falling, drops of rain are falling on the streets. So when drops of rain are falling, have you ever experienced this experience? We are walking down the street and I'm telling to my friend it's going to rain. My friend is like, no, it's not going to rain. But why am I saying it's going to rain, and why they are saying it's not going to rain? Because when initially rain is going to fall in that area, first pitter-patter drops, very small droplets of rain will fall on us. So while two people might be walking down the street, if the rain has now fallen on my skin, one drop has fallen, then I will know, and it didn't fall on my friend's skin. So I know first, because it fell first on my skin, that rain is going to happen. After a few seconds of walking, the rain has now become a little bit more, like instead of 1-2 droplets just falling from the clouds, now 10, 20, 100 droplets are falling. When 10, 20, 100 droplets are falling, a few more extra droplets are now falling on our skin. So at that moment of time, few seconds later, both of us will become aware. But when can both of us will again be aware? When our skin is giving the right signaling system, when our skin is functioning properly, when my skin and its central nervous system's connectivity is doing proper function, when my brain's functioning system is also doing the right central nervous system related functions associated with what the brain has to signal to me, right? So all these things are going to happen in two people. Again, there could be two people where one person is saying it's going to rain. Even after 20 drops of rain has fallen, another person doesn't understand that it's going to rain. Why would that happen? That could also happen not because there's no drops falling on the second person, but if the second person now has either a skin disorder, or has a sensation related problem, or has a connectivity related related problem between the skin and the brain, or their brain cells are not giving them appropriate adequate signaling, any of these areas is where that person, even if drops are falling on their body, will not be able to understand that rain is falling on their skin. And then if they have good vision now and they don't have at least a vision problem, and only the problem is related from their skin to central nervous system to brain related problem, but their eyes functionality has no problem, if more than 20 drops have now started falling in front of them, then maybe they will recognize that okay, there's rain, because they can now visibly see the raindrops falling in front of them, even if their skin is not able to experience that sensation. And this thing is also a distinction that distinguishes between who has a healthy body, who has a healthy functioning 100% functional body, versus who doesn't have a 100% functionality going on with your body. So like this, humans are also like that. You should essentially, if you have good meaningful connections, essentially to have a healthy life, thriving based life, you have to have tight knit connections with people, but tight knit connections with those people who are exchanging the information in the right way. So the cell 1 of my skin that is connected to cell 2 to 5 of skin cells, all skin cells have to together give a exchange of information, exchange of nutrients, exchange of oxygen needs to be happening. Along with the cells 2 to 6 of the skin cells, cell 1 is also connected to some central nervous systems other cells as well. So those other cells it is connected to, again they also have to have good exchange of information, exchange of nutrients, exchange of biochemical stuff. So all of these are necessary for a healthy body's functionality. And like that, every cell, every tissue, every organ in our body has a purpose, has a functionality, has a basic core functionality that has to continue based on the type of cell you are, type of cell connected to the other types of cell you are connected to, type of function you have to basically perform at the bare minimum level for the cell to be considered as a healthy cell. And the moment this exchange of information is not happening, if my cell, I experienced recently some cell death in my cells of my leg because of the fact that I was at that time having some nutritional challenges. I was also having some oxygen delivery capacity related challenges, and I was having some water pollution related problems that has escalated my problems related to consuming the right level of water that my body needs. So all of these now has slowly resulted in cell death. The cell death that is happening because cell death, if not complete cell death, it has at least started the process of partial cell death. And I understand cell death is happening, I know all the reasons why the cell death is happening, but if I go to the doctor who doesn't understand the severity of the problem that has escalated in my body, despite my education, my trying to communicate this issue that I am trying to communicate in a 10-minute, 5-minute conversation in this video like this, if the doctor is unaware how cell death works, if the doctor is not ready to trust the information a patient is giving to them, if the doctor doesn't understand that the patient might have more education or some relevant education related to the problem they are facing in life, at that point of time you will not have right access to care at all, because it's a communication issue, and this communication issue is a major problem in many systems of healthcare governing the world, because many of the people who work in certain systems of healthcare either are overburdened or overworked. And in the places where they, at that time point when you're overburdened or overworked, when your cell is constantly getting subject to multiple threats, like let's say there is acid rain falling, there is someone who has poisoned your face wash, and when you're washing your face wash is also contaminated with some alkali or something, when someone has gone and deliberately not providing you with, like you've assigned someone in your family to provide you with with food, but that person is deliberately not providing you with food, or when they provide you with food, they are giving you non-nutritious, poor quality food, poisoned food, or lack of nutrition filled food. Then all the basic things needed for a cell to function properly, they are amiss from that cell's life. So slowly cell death will start happening, cell damage will first, and it at the first point itself have death. Yes, if the alkali that fell on my cell is extremely toxic to my skin, immediate cell death will happen. The cell will rupture immediately. But if it is not high level or very toxic, highly toxic chemical, then at that time the cell death will be slow cell death. And slowly if 2-3 different things are going wrong slowly with my life, the cell death that is developing in my skin is slowly developing. But while the cell death is slowly developing, it is at a critical level now, where over the years of or months of some slow developing cell death related paradigms in my body, now the intervention, the skin of the area where the cell death is happening for me needs that I need first whatever toxin is causing the cell death, I need the toxin removal from that area, which I have been physically and functionally doing as a result of some pharmaceutical related knowledge that I have, that if I understand that what is actually leading to some cell death in that area is because I might have consumed some toxins in my food, or applied some toxin is there in my water supply which is getting absorbed by my skin, and that chemical toxin has some properties. Based on that property, if I can use, if it is a water soluble toxin, some water related scrubbing mechanism can be used to clean that toxin from that area. If it is an oil soluble toxin, some oil solubility related mechanisms can be used to massage that area, use the oil to extract some toxin from that area. This is something that is part of what helps people when you have muscular pain related problems related to accumulated toxins in your muscles. At that time, this is the basic principle of massage therapy, Ayurvedic massages that help you dispel some toxins that can expel out of your body as a result of the massage being done on that area. But if it is not simply a toxin buildup, but it is a toxin buildup and a toxin buildup that is not just at a minor level. When it is at a minor level, massage therapy, Ayurvedic massages will help you. But when it is at a major level in Ayurveda, is you can go and do massages, but you may also need some extra other things like panchakarma therapy, wherein panchakarma therapy 5-6 different mechanisms are used to detox you from the toxins that have accumulated not simply under your muscles or skin, but other parts of the body as well. So at that time, panchakarma is trying to address 5-6 different elements that are needing to detox for you to have a good health, right? So similarly, in what is applicable in Ayurveda is also applicable in allopathy as well. And the problem with allopathic practitioners of the kind who are, when I mentioned in my previous video that bare minimum therapy is happening, what I mean by bare minimum therapy is some of the doctors in certain parts of the world, their education level is, and their belief system about therapy is limited belief systems about therapy. So the limitation that they have put in their workplace, that has happened to some people sometimes when they keep continuously seeing like when and this is a problem zone, especially in those places where the density of population is high and the percentage of doctors to treat a patient is low. And to explain it, I'll again use a human body's defense mechanism system to explain it. When my body is at its optimum functionality, there are certain immune system functions that have to happen, immune system responses that have to be delegated for my body to do certain function. So there are, out of millions of cells in my body, at least 10,000 cells or 1,000 cells who are deployed to do some immune system related functions. Normally, when my body is in normal conditions, at least 1,000 immune system cells are working. I'm giving all rough random numbers, okay? This is just to conceptually make a person understand this concept first. That there will be, out of million cells, 1,000 cells are deployed to do normal defense of a body. But when a disease is happening, I need more resources because it's not normal cleaning thing that needs to be done. It's not normal excretion that needs to be done. It's not normal urination it needs to be done. It's not normal sweating that is happening. It's not normal other lymphatic system function that needs to get deployed. Normal immunoglobulins are not enough to combat what is there in my body. That is why only if someone has cancer, if someone has coronavirus, if someone has some other severe health incidents going on in their body, at those time points, those patients will have two types of defense mechanism now show up in them. One is definitely the immunoglobulin levels will now go high. The immunoglobulin levels will go high when those immunoglobulins are involved in the defense mechanism system. So earlier, if normally my immunoglobulin level should be 100, now there are thousands of immunoglobulins being produced by my body. Why? Because that 1000 increase from 100 to 1000 increase that has happened, that increase has happened because the body is trying to defend against the toxin that is causing my cancer, or the toxin that is causing my organ damage, or the toxin that is leading to some other disease in my body, right? Same way, there are also some toxins. If the toxin itself now damages your immunoglobulins, then what will happen? Instead of the immunoglobulin or something else, like sometimes people's blood platelet count falls. So when that blood platelet count is falling, why is the platelet count falling? Because the thing that is causing a harm to their body, that thing is actually causing some of these cells which should normally live at a particular number in your body. That number, normal number, is not there. It has fallen down because something is destroying those cells, something is preventing the creation of those cells, something like that is going on. These are some basic general principles I'm talking about. Why? Because this is also the same thing which determines the functionality and trajectory and processes that govern our functional lives as a human, that also governs our work lives as a person who is working in a particular profession. So in a medical profession, if we consider that the doctor is the head of the unit, like the brain, like how brain is considered as the head of our body, like that, if we consider doctor is the head of the organization, that is the who should be considered to be the head of the organization. The problem is the doctor can only be a head of an organization when the doctor knows effectively to manage and build communications and have the appropriate communication network set up with rest of the body. Then only a doctor can become a head. And in US, because medicine has been there are for-profit and non-profit organizations that are involved in healthcare delivery and medicine, you see that the head is not simply a doctor in US. In US, in a hospital, the hospital administrators have come up because they need to make the executive decision making process. And the doctor is, while the doctor is involved in the treating, the doctor is actually the heart of the organization doing the, because heart also has very key important functions. With if the heart fails, if the brain fails, both can cause death in a person. So similarly, the doctor is actually the heart, because doctor is essentially a doctor who should, not just a doctor and other healthcare professionals. Doctor might be the heart of the unit that is governing our medical system in a hospital, and other ancillary medical professionals who are working with the doctor, the ones who are working nearer to the doctor, like the nurses and the assistant or to the doctor, or a PharmD doctor of pharmacy person, they are going to be the ones which are centrally connected to the doctor in some way. And then the other staff, like assistants working with the doctor and nurses and other ancillary professions associated with the practice of medicine in a country, those people are like the capillary system, the venous system, the arterial system. That is what work other people are doing, right? So this is how people have to start now looking at the reasons why doctor also has an important function to play. The other ancillary people also have an important function to play in the system working properly. And at that time, when I'm mentioning these antisocial personality types or personalities who are now deliberately causing harm, those people have to be identified, because if a person's job is to pump blood, like they have to do a very key function where you have to do that function. If the heart doesn't pump blood to the rest of the body, one basic functionality of heart has gone away. So it is a basic functionality that anyone who works in healthcare has to have empathy for their patients, has to have compassion for the patient, has to have the caretaking personality type in them, has to have the basic core functionality that is needed for them to provide service of care to another human being. But this thing is not taught in our schools. This thing is not also, when hiring a professional, people do not look sometimes into this core aspect of hiring someone for a job. And sometimes in those jobs which are low paying jobs, or jobs where the difficulty level and stress level in a job is high, or it's a very risky job, in all these kind of jobs, sometimes you end up just hiring whoever shows up for the interview, which is a very bad thing, because the people who can show up for those jobs could be those antisocial personalities who will gravitate also towards doing these jobs which no one will take. They will take up that job that no one is ready to take. But most people will assume that this person doing this job must be so brave that he is doing this risk taking job. But only when is it again a balanced person taking a risk taking job? If a balanced person has taken a risk taking job, they will again do their job meaningfully, responsibly. But if a mentally imbalanced person, socially imbalanced person with a criminal mindset has taken up a difficult job, understand that they are doing it for, not because they are brave, not because they have service mentality with the job. And I'm talking about service mentality because everything in life actually is about the act of service to other human beings. Like this one cell connected to the 5 other cells around it, and also the central nervous system related cells, and also other subcutaneous cells. So many other cells are also connected. The basic first connection is the skin cell itself. But then other than the surface level skin cell, there are subcutaneous level skin cell also it has to be connected to. There are nervous system skin cell also it has to be connected to in some way. Some information exchange has to happen even if you are not connected to a cell directly. But the top cell, after there are 5-6 layers of cells here. So those 5-6 layering of cells that are there in underneath my skin, they all have some functionality that from the top layer, even if I'm not connected to the bottom layer of the cheek cells, there's still like the under the cheeks. This is also my cheek. This inside of my cheeks is also my cheek cell, right? But the cheek cell that is inside my mouth and the cheek cell that is on my face, they are two different kind of cheek cells structurally and functionally. But exchange of information still has to happen between those cells as well. So these exchange of information, exchange of nutrients, exchange of biochemical processes, exchange of water, exchange of oxygen, when amiss is when also the cell is dying. So if you don't understand that the patient that is coming to you has a problem related to nutritional deficiency, maybe because they are from a low socioeconomic status, when can that happen to a doctor? A doctor who's always consistently seeing only elite patients, and after seeing elite patients, at the time when he was initially seeing elite patients, nutritional deficiencies were not showing up in his elite patients because they are well-fed people and they had a lot of money. So at the point of time when they were practicing as a doctor of an elite patient, which maybe they have been practicing as a doctor for 50 years, 40 years, 30 years. And at that time point, when 30, 40 years back they used to practice, the certain patient population group they are used to seeing at that point of time all had a healthy constitution because it was a healthier earth, and because maybe if they have become now in the 30, 40 years a very famous doctor, being a famous doctor, only the person with a lot of money, lot of connection, lot of power, and sometimes someone very persistent person but less powered person, less moneyed person, these are only the kind of person who will come and see that doctor. When you have become very famous, when you have become very popular, and also in a country where according to the percentage of the population of the country, the number of people who have to do the function of a medical provider's role are much less compared to the number that is needed to actually exist to ensure that the healthy society will exist. Meaning, in my body, like when thousands of cells of immune system related cells have to be there in my body for my body to normally function as a healthy body. But if 1,000 people and let's assume those 1,000 people are supposed to be the doctors who are helping me stay, doctors and medical professionals who are helping me stay healthy. Now, if my body needs 1,000 cells, but consistently as a result of some programming and false paradigms that have been set up in our systems, consistently only 800 people are showing up for the job, then you are always in a lack. You don't have enough personnel only to do the bare minimum job. So at that place, at those places where the bare minimum job related personnel number is only not present, at that place also bad therapy will emerge, access to care related problems will have emerged, operational blockages will be there, workflow blockages will be there, all these problems will show up. When the number of personnel that is actually needed to address a issue is not equivalent to the number needed, the minimum number needed to actually just cause a population to be healthy in normal life conditions. And then that is the normal life condition, and this is where the downtime phases, when a business is going through a downtime or a slow time, any business or any healthcare profession or any profession, when they are going through their down times, slow times, resting times, that is the time when you are meant to analyze that and do the analytical work necessary to understand what is the bare minimum people needed to do this job in the right way, balanced way, when ideal conditions are present. But is life about just ideal condition of life? No, life is also about those times when heavy load will be there in your body. So while 1,000 immune cells are okay for me to have different kinds of immune cells, they are okay for me to have as the average number of immune cells when my body is just doing bare minimum normal average functioning and all conditions necessary for my health are present in my life. At that time I need 1,000 cells, but I will need 10,000 cells when abuse is going on, when antisocial personality are consistently poisoning someone in the home, or when someone is adding stress to your life because they're an abusive person, or when you have some external disease causing agent like a mold or a virus in your environment adding to your health harm. At that time, that's why only immunological responses increase, and from 1,000 cells, now you have 10,000 cells. Right, that happens, that will happen. Both, it is an indicator of the fact that your body needs help. It is also an indicator of a fact of where the help is needed, that helps us in diagnosing a disease a person is going through. Right, but this deployment of having additional resources now come together to do a function to help body now recover from a crisis situation, that can happen when our body has the capacity now to produce extra immune system cells, when my body is also functioning healthily to produce extra immune response against a disease. But there can be some people who are nutritionally depleted, who are depleted because of who can be depleted from nutrition, depleted from oxygen, depleted from water, depleted from clean air. All of these, if they are consistently happening at that time, even though if my body, again, in an ideal situation where, external environment majority of the time is very ideal and not health harm supportive of multi-level, and it's only one level health harm is going on with a person. Meaning, let's say I live in a country where I am living in a place or doing some activities in my home that is increasing carcinogenicity in my body. The carcinogen exposure is high in my body, but everything else is normal and ideal. At that time, which is what in US density of population been low, much lower than America has lower density of population than Asia, right? So as a result, in America, because of lower density of population being there in America, people have had those luxury and time and resting phases and studying phases and researching phases and observing phases of understanding these patterns, that when out of the norm, some in pocket of certain place of US where, let's say, carcinogenicity is high because some factory is there that is producing some chemical that causes carcinogenicity, and because there's only one factory in that area, because there's only one factory, you know that the root cause of the problem is happening from that factory. So that factory producing only one chemical that is a known carcinogen, now I have pinpointed that chemical 1, which is a carcinogen, is the root cause of my cancer, and a cancer associated with, let's say, cancer A. So cancer A can be caused by carcinogen 1, was detected when? Hundreds of years back. That analysis was done hundreds of years back. Earth pollution was low, only one factory was present, only one chemical was responsible for that cancer to happen in that in the patient population living there. But in those 100 years, many other changes have now happened. In the first 10 years, now 2 factories have come up, and factory 1 has carcinogen A, factory 2 has carcinogen B, and now a next set of patient population has emerged whose cancer is not simply happening from just carcinogen A. It is also happening from carcinogen A and B in combination, giving them cancer. And that is the cancer which is another type of cancer. So like that, different combination of carcinogens in your environment may end up giving you different kinds of cancer. That also has emerged now as a data, that also has possibly been done, some correlation related to that has happened. But now this is 100 years down the line. So in 100 years down the line, if all the doctors who have studied this basic understanding of carcinogen A giving cancer, carcinogen B giving cancer, or understanding of all the parameters of there are these 5-10 different carcinogens that can lead to someone's cancer, that education is available not simply to doctors but people who are working with chemistry students, biochemistry students, biology students, other ancillary healthcare professionals. They have also studied all these things, and this is the time now in this century all these fields of work have to combine together, like how this cell is connected to 5 basic first. So like a doctor will be, when a doctor is practicing medicine, that's why a doctor is internal medicine doctor, has to be connected to other internal medicine doctor to understand what is going on in internal medicine related relevant practices. But an internal medicine doctor, if he thinks that he only needs to understand internal medicine and nothing else, he's wrong. He has to also work actually with a chemist, a pathologist, a person who is, sometimes he may have to work with a neurologist, sometimes he may have to work with a urologist, sometimes he may have to work with a gynecologist, and in the medical profession itself, he has to now start, he or she has to now start speaking with other professionals of a different paradigm than their area of expertise. And they just don't have to speak with a doctor. In US, that's why only they are speaking with the nurses, they're communicating there, and all these meetings have been, hospital administrators have now come up, because as I said, doctors are actually technically the heart of a system that is taking care of a person's health, whereas the immune system might be immune defense system. Even though I correlated immune defense system also with doctors, it is true some doctors have to be the immune defense system part as well, but that immune defense system part, our immune defense system does exist in our blood. So the doctor that is doing the basic heart functionality is a internal medicine doctor possibly. But the doctor who is also now got to go and visit different places and do some defense action, like a person who is like a trauma surgeon who acts in war zones, or a doctor with borders without borders, like doctor who travels to different countries for treating different kinds of patients. Now those doctors are like the immune systems doctors. They're traveling via the blood flow to different parts of the body to treat, and like that they're traveling to different parts of the globe to do their function. So different types of doctor, based on your personality type, you will now become a different kind of doctor. But the one who has to head the whole process, the heart has to have the strongest voice, has to have the strongest reach in order for the heart to do its basic function. Like heart has to beat the strongest heart, the most functional heart has to beat so strongly that every cell of my body gets permeated by the blood that the heart is pumping, and it is able to also bring back from every cell of the blood all the toxins and nutrients that the blood should be able to bring back. That is when the heart is at its optimal functionality, and also it is strongly connected to all the other ancillary things. So not just the heart has to be healthy, technically the whole body also has to be healthy. And to determine whether the quality of health of the rest of the body is determined by our brain and central nervous system. So that brain and central nervous system's function is like the administrator of a hospital, or administrator of a clinic, or a CEO of a business, because when a business is run, that CEO is making the decisions related to, in a business, the CEO is the brains of the business, whereas the COO, the operations officer, they are the heart of the business. So again, the heart has to pump really well, and the brain has to be connected to everything and know where problems are occurring, where problems need to be, what problem needs to be fixed, how the problem has to be fixed. All that administrative function is being done by our brains. And this administrative capacity related right functionality, if you do not have in any organization, to understand, and the brain has to understand when the body has to rest. That we have in the brain, the central nervous system has the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, which determines when the body should run and when the body should rest. So if certain diseases are going on in my body, and brain is also important in disease condition related understanding of our body. So like that only, that's why in a hospital, or a good functional, balanced functioning hospital, the respect given to the administrator and a doctor is similar. At least in US, that is what has emerged. But in India, that is not emerging. Or if in those places where the respect is imbalanced, where some hospitals, the administrators might be really strong and good quality people, but the doctors may not be good quality people, there also strife might happen. In some hospitals, the doctors might be really good quality doctors, but the administrators may not be good quality doctors. And if you've watched any of the US shows related to this element of practice that is prevalent in US healthcare, in fictional life also this has been depicted, because what is shown in shows like Scrubs, Grey's Anatomy, ER, all these shows actually show both the administrative challenges as well as the medical challenges, and not just from the perspective of the top class administrator or the top doctor of that hospital, but it also shows the challenges that are faced by the ancillary medical professionals of those areas, who are also working in a hospital and who are responsible for good functioning of a hospital. Of course, the show, except for Scrubs, in Scrubs we had one character, the janitor, who was given some central work and role, but in a humorous way. But technically, a janitor of the hospital is also a custodian in a hospital, is also an equally important functional part, and equally needs to have the right balanced status of health. And if you see, actually the janitor was a little antisocial personality type in the hospital, but that janitor being and there is a reason why, even though people don't understand this, God shows us all everything related to life. You can understand the teaching related to life, the deeper teaching related to life or your profession, either from a fictional thing or from a real life experience. And there is a reason why a janitor is a little bit of an antisocial personality. Why? Because the janitor is not can quietly, he doesn't need to talk with other human beings. So if he has a little bit of an antisocial personality trait, it is okay when his antisocial personality trait is not pushing him to do some harm to a patient. He was actually, in the story of Scrubs, he was actually sometimes psychologically manipulating JD, or psychologically doing something with JD. But at that time, because it is a humorous show, it is okay to have that, and it was done more in a fun way. They softened up the janitor's character also later on in the show. So it wasn't he was not a toxic personality. But if there was, instead of that janitor that was portrayed in that show, there was another person who is actually now psychologically manipulating someone, who is of a high criminal grade mentality, that person will not just psychologically do just the fun things that the show showed he was doing. They will really be abusing someone. They can end up abusing someone. They can end up abusing patients. They can end up doing all the kinds of things I told in the previous video. And not just a janitor, this can happen from a doctor as well. And that's why only it's very critically important that if you are getting, like, for example, and here also lies the second thing, some of my videos, when I'm saying certain harsher things, you have to understand that those harsher things have to be said because there's some critical, crucial problem that needs to be addressed by that organization. The place where some harsh experiences showing up in their administration, showing up in the personal working there, showing up in the way in which the business or a organization is run, there when heavy customer complaint is happening, or harsher complaints are emerging, or poor patient health outcomes are emerging, many patient populations are dying, many people are dying of mistreatments, and as a result of which someone comes to a doctor and slaps the doctor, which is something that has happened in India. All of these you have to understand is happening in India or certain parts of the world, pockets of the world, because you're not addressing the root problems of that area. For example, if these kind of incidences have happened in Delhi, why? In Delhi government institutes this has happened because in Delhi there is a systemic problem of governance not doing, the people with political motivation or political power, not just in Delhi, any part of the world where political power and political importance or monetary power is of more value to, has become more valuable than anything else in the world. At those places there's nothing but systemic problem that is going to emerge. And even if a ignorant patient comes to you, and mostly people who are going in a government hospital will not be health educated about what is happening with healthcare delivery related steps, like what I am talking about in an educated way here, having worked in healthcare systems in India, worked seen the healthcare systems function in a certain way as a patient trying to access those healthcare systems, what I am personally experiencing as a patient as well as professionally experienced when working with doctors as a part of a healthcare team delivering healthcare to patients. Both of this I have done in my life, and at that time, because of both of these experiences, I have a little bit better insight and education of the patient perspective as well as the healthcare providers perspective, right? And because some of these healthcare providers have also been my family, I also understand their psychological mentality also when they are doing a job in a particular way. And that psychology is important because, and not just with people who are doctors, but I have friends who are in medical professions of other kinds. I have colleagues who are working in different professions who were so going to collaborate working with doctors and medical professions and hospital administrators, colleagues who are acquaintances in my classes who were all from different professions, not simply the profession of medicine. Because when I was doing healthcare administration degree, business administration degree, the people who are learning healthcare administration, business administration, public health related courses, these were all my classmates. And all of these classmates didn't just simply come from the, a doctor was hardly present in that whole group. The people who are doing the administrative work, people who are doing the public health related work, people who are working in insurance industries, government in institutes, administrators of pharmaceutical organizations, they can all be people who could be and some of them, instead of doctors, some of the administrators were nursing professionals, pharmacy professionals, some were lawyers, some were police people, some were social health related students. So different people from different classes of worker class has now gaining the public health related administrative health related insights, because from their profession is also involved in healthcare delivery and service oriented work related to healthcare delivery in maybe a superficial manner seemingly to a doctor, but it is an equally important socially relevant manner that is needed to have a balanced society. And that's why only you have to not just simply interact when you're a doctor. You don't simply interact with all internal medicine doctors, or if you are an oncologist, you don't simply interact with all oncologists. You may have to interact with some pathologists, you may have to interact with some PharmD students, you may have to interact with some pharmaceutical industry people who can give you more better insights and education about the work you are doing. You may also have to interact now, given the current status of earthly life. You may have to be socially responsible enough to understand what is going on in your area. Like if you continue treating the patient without clue of the fact that a heavy degree of carcinogen is prevalent in your local atmosphere, you may have read it in the newspaper, but you haven't now put two and two together, that the newspaper information that carcinogens have been detected in your water supply is a relevant treatment regimen information you may have to use for treating those patients who have been living in this area for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Then that newspaper article information, you have not collated that information to understand that it has some relevance. Does that make sense? If which is what I found to be a problem. I mentioned this in one of my previous videos when I was talking about my family health history. My family who lived in West Bengal, my grandmother, who I mentioned in my first two videos as well, when she had cancer, her cancer initially was thought to be like a gastrointestinal problem because she was vomiting acidic contents all the time. And then later on, after further investigation, it got detected as cancer eventually. But one thing missing from all her treatment regimen, which was okay if people have missed it 30 years back, but now it is high time people should not be missing this information as a part of treatment regimen for anyone who is existing in places like where she used to live. What was that relevant information? The relevant information was that in those places when she had cancer, not at the time when she had cancer, I don't know whether this information was commonly known, but at least 5-10 years after she passed away, there was common knowledge in the newspapers of that area, as well as in the healthcare professions also. Many others who I studied healthcare 8-10 years after she passed away, right? So my beginning stages of those healthcare phases, at those times I knew that arsenic is now found in our water supply of those places where a lot of rice farming is done. So in rice farming areas at that point of time, I'm talking about 20, 30 years, 25 years back information. 25 years back, even 10 years back, these reportings have been done where certain kinds of farming belts have found to have high content of arsenic in their water. And why is arsenic being in your water supply a relevant information? Arsenic being present in your water supply is a relevant information because arsenic is responsible for giving you initially arsenic poisoning symptoms. If you look at the gastrointestinal symptoms of arsenic poisoning, is very similar to simple acid reflux. And what could be thought as acid reflux response because of heightened acidity in the body could also be a acidic response or burning sensation that can develop in someone's body when they are undergoing arsenic poisoning. And this arsenic poisoning related issues I have started becoming aware in the last 10 years, though indicators of arsenic poisoning were present in my nails, were present in my hair quality when I was growing up with my grandmother. So while the newspaper article or data related to arsenic poisoning being high in arsenic content being high in the waters of West Bengal, that news information I found out about it only 20 years back or 10 years back. The presence of arsenic poisoning in someone's life, the indicators of it long before you actually detected it in your water supply, the poisoning can show up in your body without anyone having known that arsenic is there in your water. How will you know it? If you are a good doctor and you understand the symptoms of arsenic poisoning very well, you would have found those symptoms in the nails, in the hair, in the acidic response of a patient, and all the other indicators that show arsenic poisoning is happening to a patient. So, for a person like my grandmother, anyone who is like my grandmother, who is eating foods now with arsenic content in that food or arsenic content in the water supply that they use to cook the food, they all can potentially, now that the data is known that in West Bengal arsenic content is high in the water, like that, not just in West Bengal, but I'm using West Bengal as an answer, as an example, simply because my family lives there, right? So and not just because my family lives there, I have people in my family who do treat patients related to arsenic poisoning without actually treating their arsenic poisoning, which is what is pissing me off. Not just family, but doctors in general. This correlation of data has not happened, which is pissing me off. Why? Because already 30 years have passed since many patients have shown the indicators of arsenic poisoning. People who have not gone undiagnosed throughout their life, even though they have arsenic poisoning going on, ongoing arsenic poisoning going on, because my ignorance of the fact that water supply in West Bengal has arsenic, or rice in West Bengal has arsenic contamination, or wheat in certain other parts of India has arsenic contamination, because I have found in the via taste, via the response to use of certain food products, certain wheat related food products, certain rice related food products, even rice bran oil, with all these three things, I have found heavy acid reflux like responses, which later on I correlated to arsenic poisoning related responses. And the moment I don't consume those rice bran oil, don't consume those biscuits made of wheat and other ingredients which could have arsenic in them, or those rice which has arsenic content in them, the moment I don't consume any of this, or the water that has arsenic content and I don't consume that, I do not have those arsenic poisoning symptoms. Because every poisoning's symptoms, main first rule is you have to remove the poison from your environment, or the patient has to be removed from being exposed to the poison. But at the practical level, and everyone, if I believe, if any doctor or any healthcare profession has this mindset that arsenic poisoning means like a Agatha Christie novels arsenic poisoning. In Agatha Christie novels, there are stories of patients or people who die of arsenic poisoning, and then the detective backtracks the story and figures out, based on the symptoms of the patient, based on the trajectory of what was happening to the patient, that that person who died was murdered using arsenic and they were poisoned using arsenic. There, when arsenic was just the Agatha Christie stories were a century back stories of murder mysteries, and in those century back of stories, at that point of time, lot of chemistry practices, chemistry labs used to have all these very easy access to chemistry related chemical components. So that's why someone who is a chemist now and an antisocial personality or a criminal minded person, if they are a chemist working in a pharmacy, or they are a chemistry student doing some chemistry research in a lab, or they are an assistant or a custodian in all these places, or they are administrator of all these places, any of these people can have access to that arsenic, right? And then arsenic also, whatever is the reason from where or mechanism by which someone who is criminally minded or antisocial personality type, they will go and access that using the circumstances of life that gave them that access, and then using the opportunity and access, they have now caused the poisoning. But this is the general perception of poisoning of humans, that people who get poisoned are doing it deliberately, meaning some criminally minded person is adding something to your food and doing it to you, or the fact that if I want to commit suicide, I will consume arsenic deliberately and commit suicide. And these are the either or kind of people. Or if you are a small baby, there was arsenic present in something that you were using in your home, and the baby had accidental poisoning because they consumed it accidentally. These are the three mindsets that doctors have fixated on, or healthcare professions are currently fixated on, thinking that these are the three types, like either you're deliberately doing it, or you accidentally got exposed to it, or someone poisoned you, right? But there is another thing going on in the earth, which is what I want people to wake up to. And this other thing is inadvertent poisoning, which is slightly different from accidental poisoning. In accidental poisoning also, someone who's accidentally poisoned is getting poisoned because and in accidental poisoning there are two classes again. In the accidental poisoning of a child, the child is unaware that this thing is poison, and they have drunk something that has some arsenic in it, they have drunk something that is poisonous to them. That's how when children end up in the ER or something, or in a poison control center, they have consumed something not knowing it is a poison. But this accidental poisoning that a child is doing, consuming something not knowing it's a poison, who else has these accidental exposures? Someone who's like, if you are getting accidental poisoning from pesticides, you were working with pesticides because you are a person who does regular pest control. If you are a gardener doing pest control, if you are a pest control authority doing pest control work, if you are a farmer doing pest control work, if you are a municipal worker doing some pest control, if you're a custodian doing pest control, that is when you are getting also accidental exposure. But now, other than those people also getting accidental exposure, normal human beings are also getting inadvertent or accidental exposure. What do I mean by inadvertent or accidental exposure? It is inadvertent exposure also for not just the farmer who is doing farming. If I'm not a farmer, but my home is right next to a farming area where a lot of pesticides are being used, or a area where the water supply is known to have arsenic in the water, and I am not doing anything related to arsenic in my life. I have never touched arsenic in my life as any profession that needs arsenic to be touched. Despite that, there is water supply in my home that has arsenic. There is farming being done in my neighborhood that has got pesticides. Will I have inadvertent and accidental exposure to arsenic or pesticides as a result of living in a home like that? And if I am just in a place where arsenic poisoning is happening, only arsenic poisoning might be responsible for my cancer. But if I am in a place where arsenic is also there, pesticides are also there, some other chemicals are also there, all of which are cancer causing, all of which are cell damaging, depending on where I am, how much exposure I have had to these poisons and toxins, is the level at which I will show up and present a particular disease, or I might even show up and present a group of diseases. So a person could have, and the part where I said I was getting pissed off is, in 30 years, if you have not correlated this fact that arsenic is present in rice, arsenic might be present in the water that you use for boiling rice, arsenic might be present in the water that you might be just because arsenic is there in the water, because of arsenic in the water, when I'm saying arsenic is there in wheat, is it the wheat that the arsenic is present, or is it the water used to make the dough that is then used to bake a cake or a biscuit, is the place where arsenic is now getting introduced? So what is the root source? That root source is important for whom to understand? The person who is operating a business related to health. So if you want rice bran oil free of arsenic content, you have to first raise the awareness, understand, put 2 and 2 together of the general information, that if in your area arsenic is highly present in your rice, then first you have to understand that because your basic ingredient, that rice that you're using to make that oil, can have arsenic in it. It is also possible that that oil has arsenic in the oil as well. And then after you have raised that awareness, first you have to raise the awareness of what is the general condition of the area where that factory is there, from where the from where the oil is being made. Not just the factory, but from where is that factory now, because it's a global world, where is the source from where that food is coming. So the food supply chain's whole step has to be tracked to figure out from where is the arsenic coming from. For a oil, the number of things will be very less, because oil is only one ingredient. Or if oil related tampering is going on, maybe 2 ingredients might be there. Like while they're marketing it as a oil that is olive oil, but if instead of just using olives, they have tampered it with some mustard oil, now you have to track both the mustard oil and olive oil's supply chain, right? So all these things are all critical, important, discerning factors, and the more complex a thing you are tracking, like with a biscuit or is it just wheat that is used to make a biscuit? No, there's water, there's wheat, there might be milk or milk products, there might be yeast, there might be baking powder, there might be salt, there might be sugar, there might be if other nuts and raisins and other things are there in that product, whatever it is that you're making. And I'm saying biscuit and cookies and these things because biscuit can mean two different things in different English language. Cookies can also mean two different things in different languages, but they're all bread based, wheat based products. So understand this is all related to wheat based any product that you're making. Maybe if it's a even simpler thing like a pizza, again it's the same thing. Is it the wheat that is the arsenic contaminant? Is it the water that you're using that is the arsenic contaminant? Is it when a product is toxic or bad for health consumption? What is it in that product? If it has got 10 ingredients, out of those 10 ingredients, which is the root source? Is it the ingredient that is the root source? Is it the combination of ingredient that is the root source? All this analysis and work has to be done, but all this analysis and work can't be done in a society where people are always just focusing on overproduction, gain, constant production. That's why you need the downtimes. That's why you need the sometimes some businesses have to fail. Which businesses will fail? The businesses that will fail is one where there is no personnel there in that business to actually examine all these elements that I'm introducing in my videos. All these elements have to be governed by someone. Administrative person has to govern the mental health status and understand also the emotional health status of a person. If you are involved in healthcare or service industry and you keep hiring antisocial personalities, you will never have that level of service oriented work that is necessary for that business to actually truly be a healthy business. For a while on the paper, for a few years or decades also, a system and group of people can fool via the foolish mechanism of understanding what is profit, and the foolish mechanism of what is considered successful is the foolish mechanism that focuses only on gains and wins and someone from being from some elite institute or some elitism present. That is the foolish mechanism, meaning that is a long-term perspective-wise foolish mechanism. At the short-term gain-wise, at the instant gain-wise person's perspective, it seems like a very easy rush of success or easy understanding of success. And I'm not saying in all those successful people also competent people are not present. They are going to be present. But true competency doesn't really simply rely on gain, doesn't really simply rely on how popular you are, doesn't simply rely on how much money you have brought to yourself or an organization. True competency relies on many other factors. And those other factors can develop and will bring out or come out in a person actually during the crunch time, actually during the resting phases, actually during the phases of downtime. That is where a business or a person or a organization or a system of healthcare delivering something, system of business delivering something, the true merit of how strong your organization is, how well connected and balanced your functionality is, that balanced functionality, well connected functionality emerges during the crunch times, emerges during the down times, emerges. And like if you know how to ride the peaks as well as the lows very efficiently and elegantly, that is the healthier system that has, and a more successful system than a system that doesn't know how to ride the highs and lows, than a system that doesn't understand that if you have chased a lot of highs, someday you will have to chase a lot of lows as well. And people, and because that is just a normal the wave functionality is a basic, again, functional principle of life. That's why light also has wave function, sound also has wave function. Our life on earth also has a wave function of, if you have had happy times, you will also have sad times. If you have had anger filled challenges in your life, you will also have peace filled challenges, peace filled times in your life. But if you accept that anger, then only you will find the peace. People don't understand this also. True peace doesn't come if you resist and artificially think that if I have kept quiet, I have achieved true peace or true zen nature. True peace and true zen comes from actually more deeply. The understanding and execution of true peace comes when you have also undergone a lot of angry phases as well, because then only you understand both the value of what is the value of anger, what is the value of peace, when is anger relevant, when is peace relevant. Like during our India's Quit India movement, if people were not angry with the British government for certain things that were going on in the Indian system of governance at that time, that was possibly causing challenges related to the Indian population's health status, Indian population's needs were not being met. So if the people of the population of India were at that time not angry that we are subjugated in our own country, at that time, if that anger was not present, would we have been able to do the revolution necessary to get freedom from the Britishers? That anger was relevant at that time. And that anger was needed at that time. If you didn't have that anger, you didn't have that fuel of anger in you, some part of the anger was not present in you, the changes wouldn't have come. But that anger also has lack of relevance right now after 75 years of independence has happened, when you are still continuously thinking that Britishers came and oppressed us. Right now the relevance of anger is slowly going away, and in hundreds of years it should completely go away. So at this point of time, when you have anger over someone who ruled you, it is a false anger. It is an anger that is a harmful and toxic anger, because in 100 years, 70 years, many years, like Britishers were there in India for a couple of hundreds of years, and in those couple of hundreds of years, while they introduced things that were oppressive to the humans, those oppressive things only led to the independence. They also introduced many good things in India. So the good things of the things that they introduced in India is the thing that we are reaping benefit of. One of the good things is the English language, which is something everyone who was ruled by the British have to understand. Someone, if there are multiple countries who were ruled by French, multiple countries who were ruled by Dutch, multiple countries ruled by Portuguese, all of these countries need to realize that the reason why this happened, like, there is always a higher purpose. While the cruelty and oppression, I'm not denying that cruelty, oppression, suppression, discrimination wasn't there in people's lives, and the grief of that shouldn't be there in your personality. That grief emotion is a valid, relevant emotion. I'm not saying that you should deny your grief, deny your anger. But don't fuel your grief and anger to a level where it doesn't need to be fueled, when there is no relevance for that grief or anger to exist at this moment of time. You could be grieving for your grandmother who was raped by a Britisher, or grieving for your grandfather who was cruelly enslaved by a Portuguese person, or grieve for your great-great-grandmother who was oppressed by some other class like the French or something. You can do that, but you can also understand that simultaneously, because they were your grandparents, someone else who has experienced that pain, while the DNA of that pain might be there inside of you, you have to also understand that at this point of time, after 100 years, 1000 years, 500 years have passed, we were also the generation who have mixed ancestry. So while your grandmother might have been Indian, your grandfather or great grandfather could have been British, while your great great grandmother was a Portuguese person, your great great grandfather could have been an African person. So all these mixed ancestry that you have in you, it will cause you to be resentful towards another population, not realizing that part of the population you are finding the resentment towards were actually your ancestors, or if not your ancestors, they might become the ancestors of your descendants. Meaning, like, your great-grandchild or grandchild might end up marrying a Britisher simply because you're living in US, and you couldn't have lived in US and couldn't have learned the English language without Britishers being there in India. If British hadn't come to India, I wouldn't have learned English. If I hadn't learned English, I wouldn't have had the capacity to communicate in the English language. If I didn't have the capacity to communicate in the English language, I can't go in any other country where English is the mode of communication. If I don't go to those countries, I can't do the work that I have to do. Right? So for either my benefit or my future generations benefit, you have to now, that's why, dispel that anger that is not relevant anymore. Does that make sense? Similarly, in a government institute where patients are angry at the doctor, yes, that anger is also relevant and irrelevant. When will it become irrelevant? It is relevant at the time point when something crucial and critical needs to be addressed. Something administratively could be going wrong, something with the medicines could be going wrong, something about the doctor's analysis of a situation could be going wrong, something that the doctor might have to fix, something that a whole system might have to fix, something that 5, 6, 10 different groups of people involved in healthcare delivery has to fix. So the protest is necessary, anger is necessary at the time point when fixing has to happen. If it doesn't happen, everything will eventually collapse from the time point where you had denial about the place where fixing had to happen. Because anger comes, strong anger's relevance happens when something has to be fixed, must be fixed. And that same anger, now if there is a AIIMS hospital where patients have been continuously suffering. 3-4 times it has occurred that in the history of AIIMS hospital that 5-6 doctors have been slapped by many patients over the period of 10 years. And in none of the patient cases in the 10 years, people have done the kind of due diligence necessary as to understand why is the anger happening. Is it a population related problem? Like it could be possible that someone was very high and they were high in alcohol, high in drugs, that's why they have slapped. That could have happened. But if they are high in alcohol, again, the person who's going into a government hospital is most likely going to be a poor patient. So poor patient, is he high because he's doing illegal activities, or is he high because the area in which he lives is near a factory where some illegal activities or legal drugs are there which are causing him to be high? That can also be your issue. Is he is maybe getting while his wife might have died and the patient is angry, but the problem is not only was the wife ill, the husband is also ill, so the husband also needs some treatment. But if the wife, only after getting hundreds of treatment, couldn't live through that experience, there is going to be this latent subconscious anger also. The husband may not know, if he is uneducated, he will not be aware about healthcare systems functional problems or structural problems or systemic problems, but intuitively, if you are suffering at the brunt of some systemic challenge, you will protest against it. It is a natural human, actually a balanced human response. And a balanced meaning, anger is not a balanced response in the sense of how humans perceive anger, but the angry response is a response needed to bring balance in a place where balance doesn't exist, simply because people are completely clueless about what is unbalanced there, what they need to wake up about. At that time, you have to be angry, because the reason why the protest against the Britishers happened during Quit India movement is many Britishers were having fun in India. They were enjoying their life in India. So for the Britishers, it was a fun experience, but for the Indians, it was failing to be a fun experience. Top class Indians, it might like maybe 10%, 20% Indians who were hobnobbing with the Britishers, for them it was possibly a fun experience, but the rest of the 70-80% of the population was not having the fun experience. Same way with the modern medicine, why I have started this series is because doctors are not understanding they are being like Britishers of the modern kind, wherein doctors are treating only 10% of the patient's population, or 10 or 20% of the patient, or maybe in some places 30 or 40% of the patient needs are being met by the doctor, or the system that is meant to address a patient's health issue, that whole system is addressing only the top class patients who are at immediately diagnosable level, immediately dysfunctional and observably dysfunctional level. So for them, they are able to treat that patient. But for the rest of the population, their needs are not getting met. and there are multiple reasons for their needs not to be met. In a country, in a densely populated parts of India or densely populated parts of the globe, the number of personnel who have been hired to take care of the population needs doesn't meet the patient needs according to the personnel hired. In some places, the number of personnel may be exactly like in US, certain hospitals do have adequate and right number of personnel working there. But there, the problem is the people are not trained to understand in a normal health status situation what are the things you are treating in a patient, in an abnormal situation in a patient's life, in a complex situation in a patient's life, how do you have to treat. So all of these are factors that you have to slowly understand. As I said, I have a map of what needs to happen, but my map can't be disclosed to people who are unaware first or unconscious first, where they have to start making a change. For doctors, the doctor who is getting patients who are angry at them has to start making changes at the patient interaction specific levels, patient healthcare delivery specific levels. They need administrators, they need people, researchers to actually do analysis, operational analysis, structural analysis, functional analysis, financial analysis, administrative analysis of what is the factor that is actually impacting, just related to a hospital's functionality. And this is just in a hospital, all these analysis needs to be done. But who can do it? Only if you hire researchers to work with you, only if you have administrators to do this kind of work, only if you respect the work of the administrators and other ancillary healthcare professions who are also responsible for the healthcare delivery aspect that a hospital is delivering to a patient. So the patient who has slapped a doctor, yes, maybe the doctor did nothing wrong. Everything the doctor has done very absolutely right. They might be the perfect doctor who didn't do anything wrong in the way in which they diagnosed the patient, treated the patient. But still, why is the doctor facing the brunt? Because as I said, doctor is the heart of the organization. So being the heart of the organization, when most people's, when really strong something is wrong in their life, their heart gets impacted, their brains get impacted at that time. Because heart and brain problems are the two problems, heart, brain, liver, these are the three organs actually which get impacted the most in a patient's life when initially something really severely wrong is happening. So, but is the heart while the heart is getting impacted by something, it doesn't necessarily mean that heart is the organ that is malfunctioning. With my health status issues, I tried to explain this, but I possibly didn't explain it very deeply. But my heart was having dysfunctional arrhythmia related issues, or increased heart bradycardia, tachycardia related issues was happening in my heart. But it is not the heart that was impacted primarily at that time. It was lung function, liver function, other systems that work in conjunction with the cardiovascular system. Those other systems of my body were malfunctioning. But because 5-6 systems associated with the heart was malfunctioning, some of my symptoms were showing up as a heart cardiac functional problem. So like that, if let's say the doctor is doing everything absolutely right, but the problem is the medicine